In the UK, this seems to be a really great way of perhaps dipping your toe into the world of South African railways, and certainly these do look to be some really interesting prototypes. A big hello to you! Welcome back to the channel. It is so great to see you, and I hope I find you well. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you up here to the loft on Ware Yard. Now today we're going to a nation's railways that we've never actually looked at officially on this channel, and certainly it's something that I think for a lot of you will be quite unusual. We're heading down to South Africa and taking a look at the really interesting South African railways. Now, long-time viewers of the Monday Club will know that there's a couple of viewers who very kindly send in links to their videos showing their layouts, modelling the South African scene, and they've been really interesting. And off the back of that, we've been approached by a retailer here in the UK that does carry extensive stocks of South African Railways outline models, both building kits as well as rolling stock too. And very kindly they've sent over a wagon and a very unique to South Africa building kit of a blockhouse, which is a kind of fort, I guess, that was used in the Boer War for protecting the railways. So I'm really interested to take a look at these. I've never actually come across any South African outline models before. Certainly I think they are quite unusual here in the UK, and certainly for our American, Canadian and Australian viewers, I suspect they're quite unusual for them too. So it's a really great opportunity to take a look at these, and I'd like to thank Thunderbolt Models for very kindly sending over these items for me to take a look at and review. And we've got a link to their website in the description box down below if you want to take a look at the full range available here in the UK. And certainly I've been quite impressed that they're not actually too expensive here in the UK. I thought that they might have increased a little bit in price in being imported from South Africa, but actually that is not the case, and it really does look interesting. And here in the UK it is actually possible to see some South African railway wagons because the Welsh Highland Railway actually does use a number of pretty much the same design wagon as we're going to look at today, but suitable for 2-foot gauge. South African Railways having 3 different predominant gauges, from standard gauge that we would know here in this country, 3'6" and 2-foot gauge. And this particular wagon is one that was made in vast numbers to suit all 3 of those systems. So in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, find their full range available to buy today from their UK stockist, tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Buy, sell or exchange any age or any gauge. Rails will take everything: locos, coaches, wagons, track work, controllers, accessories. In fact, they'll take absolutely everything. Check them out today at the link below. But I'm really excited. It's the first time I've ever seen in the flesh South African Railways models, and I'd like to see just how well they compare. So come with me, and with thanks to Thunderbolt Models, let's take a close look. South African Railways is something that certainly here in the UK we're very much not familiar with, and I suspect that that's very much the same too for an awful lot of countries around the world. It's certainly a huge untapped vein of railway model prototypes, and certainly going back to the steam era there's some incredible outline locomotives, a lot of which actually do show a lot of similarities to UK locomotives by virtue of the fact that they were built by some of the big loco builders of the 19th and early 20th century here in the UK. Now, Thunderbolt Models is based in the UK, but they specialise in South African railways, and they've got in contact with the channel after being a viewer of things such as the Monday Club and seeing us showing off some of these amazing models of South African railway prototypes, and they very kindly sent over 2 of the models that they carry in stock here in the UK, and also some information as well. So what we've got here is a South African Railways gondola type open wagon, and I do have a bit of information here as well on these. So we've got a picture in more of an oxide livery, and actually if you look closely, this wagon is loaded up with 2 caravans, it would seem. A very unusual load, and it just goes to show that there's always a prototype for everything. But these are the South African Railways DZ-7 drop-side open bogie wagon, and the DZs are one of the most numerous wagons on South African rails, both on the standard gauge, 3'6" gauge, and also the 2-foot gauge, of which a number can be seen on the Welsh Highland Railway. And certainly when the Welsh Highland Railway was being rebuilt in the early days, when they were first of all building from Carnarvon down to Dinas Junction, a lot of their permanent way rolling stock was imported South African railway wagons. And a lot of those wagons do remain at the Welsh Highland Railway and are still being used on their permanent way trains. So certainly there's some prototypes from South African railways that you can actually see here in the UK. Now this comes from a manufacturer called CMD Models, and they make a range of South African railways ready to run HO wagons, and they cover a number of the major liveries, Spoornet, Transnet and SAR, the South African Railways. CMD Models were originally based in South Africa and have recently relocated to Austria. Another little note about this wagon is it's from the hobby line, and it's the basic wagon, and the modeler can add details and KD couplers, and the reason for this is to keep the costs down. So certainly when I was looking at this, I did wonder about the couplings, but this does mean that if you're not going to use the standard couplings, and here in the UK you've got a choice, you could fit the KD couplings, but also there's a lot of magnetic couplings on the market, and you could even do slimline tension locks if you wanted these to marry up with locomotives that you already have in your fleet. So it is a great way of keeping those costs down. The wagon does, even though it says it's for the modeler to add details, it does appear to come with an awful lot of great moulded detail and is fully tampo finished. The other item that we've got here has been sent over, and this is Scenes of the Karoo, and this is a blockhouse. And again, I've got some information on this that Thunderbolt Models have sent over, and this is a laser cut, a very thin MDF kit of a structure which out in South Africa still is out there. These date back to the Boer War, I believe, and again I've got some information that Thunderbolt Models have kindly sent over, and it's actually nice to see the photographs of these in situ, and I guess that these were built in such a way that they just got left. And so even though the Boer Wars, we're talking about late 19th century, something like that, they're still out there. And during the Anglo-Boer War, the British Army built and garrisoned these blockhouses along the railway network to protect them from raids. And these are something that, just like pillboxes here in the UK, they've been left, and are quite an iconic structure. This series of South African HO laser cut building kits are stocked at Thunderbolt Models here in the UK, and they're made by Model Railroad Specialist, or MRS, based in Plumstead, Cape Town, and they are part of the hobby shop. Their development plans are to add an engine shed and goods shed to the range, so it is an expanding range. And this looks to be quite an interesting and comprehensive kit to build what is actually quite an iconic building, which you could use on a layout from the late 19th century right through to the present day, depending on how you build it, how you weather it. And these do look to be quite a nice precision kit. It's laser cut MDF. We've seen a few of these kits come through from a number of different manufacturers. Certainly we've done building videos before on laser cut MDF kits, and they do go together really, really nicely and give a strong, sturdy building at the end of the build. First up though, let's take a closer look at this wagon. So you can see on the label here that we've got the Spoornet livery DZ-7 open wagon, and this is actually quite a striking grey livery, not unlike Engineer's Grey in the UK. The box itself is completely clear plastic, and it doesn't mean you get a very, very good view of the wagon before you buy it. From CMD models and the Thunderbolt models price, again we've got a link in the description box, £17 here in the UK. And I do actually quite like this box. I'm not a massive fan of oodles of clear plastic, but I think it really does actually show off the model exceptionally well, so you can see what you're buying before you delve into the box. So let's just get on in here, and a catalogue number there I've just noticed, DZ-7 5022, in case you're wanting to track down this precise model. And the model itself, it's HO 1 to 87 scale. It appears to be a one-piece plastic moulding. Now there is some parting lines and a little mark in the middle there from where it's released from the sprue, but this is an ideal opportunity to detail it up, weather it, and also add a load. I can imagine that these were used as a jack of all trades, not unlike how the 16-ton mineral wagon might have been used in the UK for transporting pretty much everything from coal to iron ore to minerals, ballast, even scrap metal. And as we saw in that rather fun picture that was supplied with the model, we've also got their caravans. And I can imagine a couple of caravans from Oxford Diecast would certainly make an interesting scene. Now this is the standard gauge variety, and that does mean it's a little bit too big for me to swap out the bogies and run it on a layout like Mynyddt Tatus, but certainly I'd be interested to know whether they do cater for the narrow gauge versions, either 3'6" or the 2-foot gauge, which would be perfect for narrow gauge prototypes, certainly the Welsh Highland Railway here in the UK. The side detail on these is pretty good, considering it appears to be a single piece plastic moulding, and that's a great way of being able to model prototypes that might be a little bit more niche, certainly outside of South Africa. And we do get a great level of detail here. The door bangers are actually moulded integral with the body, and they're surprisingly strong. They look very, very slender, and I don't know what plastic this is, but it is very, very strong, so there doesn't appear to be any real danger of those getting snapped off. Underframe detail is basic, but it's one of those things, how often are you going to have these upside down to view the underside? So from normal viewing angles, we've got that lovely suggestion of this kind of humpback chassis detail. The side pieces are all in there, and then we've got an assortment of brake cylinders, which they are separately applied pieces, but each of them is a single piece then applied to the model. The bogies are just screwed on. There's a central screw that goes into a mounting point on the wagon, and these do come supplied with these quite an open, fairly standard diamond frame bogie, but the detail on them with the spring detail is pretty nice, and these are designed for the hobbyist to do a little bit of detailing, weathering, so I can imagine that as a starting point these certainly are great for just adding in maybe some muted dusting of like a rust brake dust type weathering powders would be perfect on these. They do come with a black plastic wheels, look to be made from the same material as these diamond bogies, and they're fairly free running, but not as free running as metal wheels might be. But again, there is the ability to change them if you want metal wheels. But certainly for keeping the price down to that £17 price tag for what is actually quite a niche model, that is doing quite well. And if you want a huge fleet of these for insidings, then perfect to use the plastic wheels as they come. The actual printing of the finish is really sharp and crisp. So we've got the DZ and then -7. The 7 is almost like a superscript on there, and then the running number of the wagon, 51-212, and then the 129. The tare weight of 19 tons, 350 kilograms, to carry a load of 44 tons. So actually quite a heavy wagon, but I guess that's about making this a resilient jack of all trades. We've got 6 drop sides along the side of the wagon. The ribbing detail on these, it is all moulded on, but it is pretty reasonable. It's a good representation, and I do like all the rivet detail that we've got along the sole bar of the wagon. Now, looking to the ends of the wagon, there's a couple of holes on there, and I suspect that's if you go for the premium version. You'll get a brake wheel perhaps, and maybe pipe detail. These are parts that you can source from the scrap box. Certainly if, like me, you've had so many different wagons and locomotives through with additional detailing that never gets used, then some of that will be a welcome addition to be able to just finish fitting out on there and on the other end. There is a coupling mounting point here, and it does leave you free to add whatever type of couplings that you desire, and it's just simply a case of screwing them in at either end. Putting the wagon on the track, it does fit the standard Pico type track rail profile perfectly well. And one thing that I've discovered is I wasn't quite convinced about the plastic wheels and their ability to roll freely. And this wagon hasn't been lubricated at all. It's merely resting against this, it's actually an Australian outline locomotive, because I don't have any couplings to fit to it of the right type. But it does actually roll pretty well. If I just pull this back and let go, it does actually roll incredibly well. There's no real resistance on those wheels, and I'm going to have to revise what I said before, that those plastic wheels actually are quite free rolling. The fact that on this is a 4% grade, it rolls away really quite happily. I don't think there's going to be any problem with those plastic type wheels. Turning now to the blockhouse, this is really interesting me. I do like some of these kits, and certainly you could imagine putting together quite a nice little diorama that you could use to either shunt wagons, a single locomotive, or indeed just to pose wagons, and to be able to model some kind of scenery that's quite different to what you're used to here in the UK, or indeed even in the US too. It comes in a plastic zip type bag. I'm just going to slide out the quite heavy card instructions, and there is a video and tips on how to build this kit on the YouTube channel The Hobby Shop, and there is a link there if you want to go and watch their video, and some really quite sound instructions here for little tips on how to build this. The rest of the instructions are pretty much based on looking at the pictures. There's no exploded diagram or anything, so certainly if you do get stuck, then it is well worth going and taking a look at that video for some information. The parts in this kit do look to be pretty sharply cut out. They're all done with a laser. It does suggest that there could well be some spare pieces for a variety of reasons, and certainly we've got the four walls here just push out some of the windows where the little piece just hasn't quite come out, and then it's just simply a case of building it up and then painting it. Pieces do look like they go together pretty well, and there is a degree of separation as well. You can see here that we've got the pieces for the little roofing parts are just kept together separately, and these will form just these kind of gable roofs over the protrusions at either side that would presumably have been for a lookout. Certainly this is a model that I'm looking forward to having a go at, and I may even let the cupboard monkey loose with this and see how well she does. I'm going to have a go as a final little project for this video at detailing up this wagon and really starting to bring this budget model alive. Now, I have been able to find and improvise a KD coupling onto the end. It's actually pretty easy to do, and I've got that matched up with some of the locomotives that I do have that have KDs, which albeit not South African outline. But before I do that project, I'll just tell you a little bit about Thunderbolt Models, who very kindly sent over this wagon and the blockhouse kit as well. They're a relatively new model shop. They've got a modest shop within the Coventry undercover market, and they actually deal in quality pre-owned locomotives and rolling stock across the main scales of O, OO, HO, N, British Outline, Continental and North American, but they also specialise with stocking CMD models ready to run rolling stock brand new. They also offer a wide range of modelling accessories, scenic materials, building kits and such like, and you'll see their adverts in Railway Modeller and Continental Modeller. But certainly in the UK this seems to be a really great way of perhaps dipping your toe into the world of South African railways, and certainly these do look to be some really interesting prototypes. The application of weathering powders has really brought the model alive, and it just shows how quick and easy it is to do this to pretty much any model. And all I've used here is a little bit of ballast in the bottom of the wagon, and then an assortment of a black Humbrol weathering wash, followed by an application of two different Humbrol weathering powders. I used the dark earth and the iron oxide, and that just gives a sense of rust coming through, and on the inside it's akin to a wagon that's been used to transport things like aggregates or iron or even, and it's left a residue on the inside as well as knocking off the paint, and it really tones down the factory effect. On the track, this wagon really does run surprisingly well. I was a little worried initially that the plastic wheels might prove a little bit troublesome, but actually this was very much unfounded. It is possible to buy a premium version of this for a few pounds more, and that model comes with metal wheels, and you can also get it with the additional detail parts already applied. The details such as the brake wheels and the brake hoses are available as a separate part that can be fitted by the end user if they so wish, and this is all about keeping the price down, which is perfect if you either have an alternative source of parts such as etched wheels and brake hoses, or if you just want a huge number of wagons in your fleet and you're not too bothered about some of these detail parts. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative too, and if you did, please tickle the like button, share this video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And a big thank you to Thunderbolt Models here in the UK for sending over these items for review, and we've got a link in the description box to take you to their website, and they do have a shop in Coventry as well. And what do you think about these? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Do leave a comment if this is something maybe you model the South African scene, and I'd love to hear your opinions on these models, and also maybe some hints on what other models can be easily found, say here in the UK or even in the US or Australia, depending on where you are modelling. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Family-run business purchasing collections for over 50 years. From single items to lifetime collections, no collection is too small or too big. Buy, sell or exchange, any age or any gauge. Rails will take everything: locos, coaches, wagons, trackwork, controllers, accessories. In fact, they'll take absolutely everything and certainly will not cherry pick the best items. Rails are only a phone call away. Call them now for the very best price and get instant cash payment or same-day transfer. Check them out today at the link below. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, and Jennifer Horton. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.